तेग बहादुर सिमरिए कर नौनिद आवे ताए सब थाई होना होई सहाय। 10वां पातशाह साहिब श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी महाराज जीओ सब थाई होना सहाय। 10 ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਜੋਤ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪਾਠ ਦੀਦਾਰ ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਧਰ ਕੇ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਜੀ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ। ਇਹ ਅਕਾਲ ਪੁਰਖ ਪਿਤਾ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਜੀਓ, ਆਪ ਤੇ ਨਿਮਰਤਾ ਸਹਿਤ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ, ਆਪ ਦੀ ਹੀ ਬਖਸ਼ੀ ਮਤ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਜੀ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਹੀ ਗੁਰਮਤਿ ਦੀਆਂ ਵਿਚਾਰਾਂ ਆਰੰਭਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਹਾਂ। ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕਰਨੀ, ਸੁਮਤ ਬਖਸ਼ਣੀ, ਵਿਹਾ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ, ਸਹੀ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਮਿਲਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਤੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਚਿਤਿਆਵੇ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਕਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm having a little trouble with my screen here. It's kind of acting up. Okay. So welcome to another session, Khoj Gurbani. Hopefully you can all hear me. We are going to actually start with Pauri 32, having completed a series of 4 Pauris. And what we're going to try and do today is, since we don't have enough volunteers, I am going to take the lead, if it's okay with you, to just read out the Pauri and then maybe spend a minute or two trying to go over the textual meanings or the more generally accepted conventional meaning of this Pauri that we have received or that has come down through traditional interpreters. And then we'll open this up for discussion and see what everybody's interpretation of this Pauri is. So with that said, I will start reading out the Pauri first. So here we go. Ik duji bon lakh hoye, lakh howe lakh vees, lakh lakh geda aakhi hai, ek naam jagdish। एतड़ा पत पौड़ियां चढ़िए होए 21, सुन गल आया आकाश की कीटा आई रीस, नानक नदरी पाई है कूड़ी कूड़े ठीस। So the Pauri is fairly short, and very quickly let me just run through the lines. Ik du jibo lakh hoye. So what Guruji is saying here is, if one tongue were to multiply into lakh, which is 100,000, and then the 100,000 were to actually expand by another 2 million, and if we were to then repeat, recite, or chant the name with all of these tongues that were supplied to us, and we were to, and then he talks about 8 rahat pauriyan. 8 here means by this manner or by climbing these steps. Chadiye is to climb. Hoye 21, that one becomes one with. 21 here means becoming one with the Isht or the deity. Here, of course, referring to to Vaheguru. And then he goes on to say, Sun gala akas ki kita airis. Sun gala akas ki, the way I understand it is that when people, that spiritual accomplishment usually always invites counterfeits. It inspires counterfeits. So it is like a crawling ant desiring to fly in the sky. But he points out Nanak Nadri paiye. Nadri here, of course, we have generally translated to mean grace. The point is that at the end of the day, grace is the clincher. Everything else is for naught. So this is how I've understood general conventional sort of meanings that have come down to us. And what I want to open the discussion with is the question that I, at least in my sort of understanding of this Pauri, have come across 2 divergent interpretations. One that says that Guru Nanak is in fact describing the methodology for what we generally know as Simran or Naam Japna. And he is then suggesting that the process starts with mechanical repetition of the tongue, which in turn triggers a deepening awareness that leads to, live or our center. And the other interpretation that I have sort of heard is that all of this practice is really for naught, because at the end of the day, you are not going to climb these steps unless you become what is being mentioned here, ikish, which means you have to lose your sense of self, your haume, to become one. So no matter what you do, unless you happen to have lost the sense of self, you're not going to actually reach the end goal, so to speak. So broadly speaking, I think this is what I have over the years heard as different interpretations. So I would like to open up the discussion with this. I'll go to Ekonkarji first. Ekonkarji, Vaiji Khalsa, Vaiji Fateh. Would you want to sort of address this?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sure. For me, I have a slightly different perspective on the first couple of lines. It goes back to Ekonkar and kind of what I think is a recurring theme of Nod in Gurbani. Nod, the sound current, like how form comes out of vibration. And so in these first lines, if my one tongue was to become two and the two become 1 million,
you're cutting off a little bit. You're cutting off a little.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes, this is better.
Okay. All right. So that when he's talking about his tongue multiplying, the power of the word is the power of creation. We start with Ekonkar, which is, out of the cosmic oneness, there comes a sound, an ong, a vibration, that kar manifests the universe. And then as human beings, we embody that same power through our word, that when our reality is based on how we speak. And to me, these first lines of the 32nd Pauri are speaking to Guru Nanak, basically saying, no matter how many tongues I may have, and it sort of presages the idea of the Khalsa, right? Because the Khalsa is where the Guru's one tongue becomes 1 million or 20 million. It's no matter how many tongues I have, there's only one thing worth talking about. There's only one reality worth creating, and that's the vibration of, I'm just going to talk about the one spirit that pervades everything. Like, there's no other thing to communicate about, and in that communication, because our word creates our reality, if I'm dedicated to speaking about the divine all the time, then it creates this kind of process that you were talking about, which is it's by our word and our remembrance and our speaking of the one that we can create a reality where, yes, step by step, I become your spouse and I'm going to merge in you, and there's a longing that gets created when we hear about the etheric realms that even the lowest person wants to come to. And for me, again, I think there's no duality between practice and grace. I think Guru Nanak's really brilliant about saying, as a human being, we have to make an effort, but we also have to have the awareness that there's a greater play. So it's not in my hands completely, and yet my effort is part of the process. And so, to me, I think that they're not diametrically opposed views. It's that I do the practice, and then grace comes in. But if I don't do the practice, the grace can never come in. And so it's that grace that comes in. And then the last line about people who praise themselves are false, it's again getting back to the notion of how we speak, creating our reality. So if I praise the one, I can create this very divine reality for myself to slowly step up and merge and have grace come into my life. But if I'm going to use my tongue to talk about my ego and praise my own reality and praise me, then I'm creating a very false experience in time and space. So that's, just a slightly different dimension to what you shared earlier.
No, thank you indeed. That is, in fact, a nuance that is worth considering, because, generally speaking, one has always seen these two interpretations that I spoke as being opposed to one another, and I kind of appreciate the way that you've tried to sort of bring them, synthesize them together as really not being in opposition to each other. Thanks a lot. Let me go out to Gurjit Singh Veerji. Veerji, are you there?
हाँ जी वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा
वाहिगुरु जी फतेह जी.
So I think you rightly pointed out there are two interpretations, and it practically happened to me. I went to a Khand Kirtani Samagam, and I was discussing it with someone, and he came and was not happy with Sahib Singh. I said, what's the case? He says, Sahib Singh wants to say that you don't need to change the name.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought that there's a problem with the Pauri, and then from that time onwards, I say, all right, it means you want to say that chanting will help. But very clearly in this Pauri, there is no need. Even with those many tongues, if you chant, you achieve nothing. Gurmat says, chanting is not an acceptable form. As per Gurmat, yogis were doing it, so in continuation with what yogis were doing, if we still remember, the Pandar is still going on. The Pandar has not left. So if I have to interpret this, I have to take help from the last one, Asan Loe Pandar. How to establish the relationship with the Pandar? And obviously, we need a naam. But what is naam is one of the biggest confusions. Yogis used to think, because if you read the first ever question they asked Guru Nanak and Siddh Ghosh is, Kavan tumhe kya naam tumhara? That can you tell us which name you chant? Kavan marga, kavan suav. These are the first four questions which are mentioned in Siddh Ghosh. And Guru Nanak didn't give any consideration to their naam because there is no naam to repeat. There's nothing like that to repeat because the one you're approaching is a very nice pankti in Sukhmani Sahib. Kahu bol na pahunchat prani, agam agochar prab nirbani. The one you're trying to contact is beyond the capacity of your five senses. The voice you are saying is only within five senses, so the whole of reaching him through chanting is rejected outrightly in Gurbani. But there is a very similar Shabad to this. If I can point you out, that's by Mahalla Chautha. Very, very similar. It says, Jehva ek hoye. Firstly, there is one Jehva, as it is said, but here the word is used as Jehva. Jehva ek hoye lakh koti. That similar sort of pattern, lakh and crore. Lakh koti kot tya ve go. He has changed the word here. That it is through Dhyan, and Dhyan is through Gyan. So ultimately, Gurbani always keep the word Gyan. If you do research, you will always find Gyan Dhyan. You can't go out of Gyan to find the source. If chanting was that important, and then it says Ram Japoji S. Now we have to really go into depth that what is Japana. The way we are interpreting Japana is not the right way. We have ultimately caught up with Japana as a Ratna, and this Pauri is a big lesson for us that we can't chant. We have to approach
Vijay, if I may just sort of ask a question. So I understand exactly what you're pointing out, but can you help us understand then the end of the second line where it says "Eet rahe pat pavdiyan"? It's referring to a step-by-step process. It seems to me. "Eet rahe pat pavdiyan." Chadiye.
Yeah, someone is in confusion that this way will lead me to Ek Rah Pat Pavadiyan Chadiyan Hoi 21. From here the decision will come. If someone is in illusion, this is the way to get one. Ish, the word is Ish is your husband, your Malak. So ik means to get one with him, because Gurbani is also always aiming to get one with the chit. That's ik. And if someone is in illusion that he will go through this way, then he says, Nanak nadri paiye, this is the wrong way, this is not the way to get another kudi kude cheese. Those who have propagated these ideas, they are falser than the falser. Kude to kude bande da idea. Who doesn't understand the ABC of Gurmat, they have given us these ideas of chanting. This is what this means. If I get respect through this way, if someone concludes this, he's basically approaching a very, very wrong path. Kude. Kuda means rubbish. And Rees, kude is like a shaky. Shaky, you understand shaky? There's a character in India known as Sheikh Chili.
Anti-boasting, basically.
Yes.
Anji.
He hasn't actually known the right way. He has propagated the idea. He's trapped himself and he's trapping others. So this is what I understand from this one.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. Thank you very much for offering that perspective. Let me go to, I see Eileen.
Hanji, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I haven't spent enough time doing a lot of research and homework, but I'm curious about this this ant. Like if we're using that ant as a metaphor. I know there was a discussion, the Sikri discussion about different animals and the different metaphors. That what is an elephant mind, the mind of an elephant is discussed. These different metaphors, and I don't really know what this metaphor means. But when I was connecting it with thousands of tongues, I think of these ants, sort of this multitude of ants. And in my sort of vernacular, I think of like there's ants they're either really strong in unison, right? So they come together and they move a really big, piece of food or something, right? So there's that unity of 1,000 ants, like 1,000 tongues, becomes strong, right? Or sometimes there's a futility. There's sort of this like they're moving things around, maybe for no reason. So I could see either way. But I would just be curious if anyone knows if there's another, how is that metaphor used in Gurbani?
Okay, well, we'll bring that up. But what do you make of these lakh geda? I mean, etra pauriyan. There is a suggestion of a step-by-step increment, and of course you've heard the two views. I mean, Concur Gorji and Gurjit Singh Ji saying that these are really. I mean, if you think that there is this path, then you're really deluding yourself, is what I heard him say. What is your take on this?
Well, my take is definitely evolving. I mean, I tend to err on the side of I've studied the Sid Ghost, and that was very potent for me. So I err on the side of thinking that the repetition and the recitation is not intended. It must be something much deeper than that. So I tend to go there. However, I've also come to think that there's something nurturing, right? So there's an inner nurturing that comes from that kind of a practice. And so I haven't quite landed on exactly how these two ideas are connected in a way that's different than the yoga practice. But that's where I'm coming from. I think maybe Guru Nanak is defining it differently, and there's something more there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Join the club. So.
Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you are. I mean, I'm not sure that I've made up my mind yet, or whether I ever will. Gurdeep Singh Veer from Amritsar, Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Fateh, are you still with us?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Anji Veer Ji, have you been able to hear the discussion so far?
Yes, I have been listening, and I've been listening that two views or two interpretations. Also, I am also trying to learn. But one thing is that if chanting, I have a question to Gurjeet Singh Virji. If the chanting by tongue is so much negated and so much not recommended, then why in Gurbani at number of places it is, I to quote some, Rasna Japti Tuni. So like this, there are so many places it is quoted that I think the beginning has to be made with Rasna only, and about this, if he can solve this, you know.
Haji, I think that's a very valid question. So, Virji Gurjeet Singh ji, Tusi Gurdeep Singh ji, you just heard him. Let me also throw in my own personal sort of experience with this. Many years ago, I can't remember how long ago, I actually tried to figure out how many times the word rasna was used in conjunction with japana, because I was trying to figure this out in my own mind, whether or not this japana equates to chanting. If it doesn't, then, I have sort of encountered many traditional Sikhs who I hold in high regard insist on doing this. And on the other hand, I have also known Sikhs I hold in very high regard who discount this. So in my own sort of search, I did try to come up with, and I found a lot of references, like by Gurdeep Singh ji saying Rasna Japti Tuhi Tuhi. There are quite a few, and I can't find them all now. But can you help us clarify that a little?
Hanji, मैंने पूछा जी, because I was
Are you there?
breaking up a bit.
हाँ जी, मैं तुसी सुनिया सवाल सुनिया तुसी?
हाँ जी हाँ मैं बीच में थोड़ा
सवाल
break
सुनिया?
I'm
Did you
still
hear
in
the
the
question?
ये तुसी रसना और जापन दी गल कर रहे हो. First of all, रसना जीव नहीं होती जी गुरबाणी विच. रसना चेतन चीज दा नाम है. Rasna is not a dead tongue which is in the mouth. That's why they say rangile jeba har ke nae. What color of the tongue we will get? It's not a thing which we can do it through our mouths. Rasna is basically your wisdom. Rasna japti tu hi. Rasna's husband is his mool. It is japti, not ratati tu hi. We are interpreting tongue. My tongue is repeating tu. Sorry, my wisdom is understanding tu. This is what should be interpreted. Because we have been basically taken out of this Atma. We are basically trying to do everything with this body. Religion is not to be done by the body. Religion is to be done by man, buddha, chit. These are the only three elements involved.
But to Gurdeep Singh Virji's point, I mean, you've got to start somewhere. So where do you start?
Now you have to start with a jap. So you have to start with the understanding of what Gurmat means to you. Who has to jap? Which way he has to jap? What are the fruits of jap? If someone is repeating, can he give us one fruit, which is mentioned in the first Pauri of Sukhmani Sahib? I have met people who don't even stop it for a second. They know basically nothing about Gurmat. You ask them a question, what is Oankar? They don't know the meaning of the first word used in Gurbani. What repeating means, they have to show the results to us as well. It means they have done something under a wrong influence. Japana is never ever means in Gurbani as repetition, because this is our own meanings we have come out with. Japana always means understanding.
Acha ji, Hanji, Gurdeep Singh Virji.
I have a question.
Haji Gurdeep Singh Virji, you heard Gurjeet Singh ji. Do you have a follow-up question for him?
Yes. I have a question. I am sure it is. Are you able to hear me?
Hanji, yes.
Hanji.
Sir, my question is that first, at the very root of it, if Rasna never is meant tongue, then in Anand Sahib, हे शरीरा मेरा इस जग में आए के क्या तुझ कर्म कमाया or the body parts are
No,
described
rasana.
in
No,
this.
no. You say rasana anras raj. That's what you want to say.
Exactly. In this,
Huh?
when he's describing Sarir, then what is the meaning of Sarir
No,
there?
no, 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 no. Sarira. He says the word sarira, not sarir.
Yeah, a Sarira Meria,
Sarira meria.
a Netro
My inner.
Mereo, a Sravano
Netro is
Mereo.
also buddhi. Yes, sarvano meryo. Yes, what have you done? It is not kan, it is not ak, it is netar and sravan. Please see, this is Gurmukhi, not Punjabi, sir. We are understanding our Atma, not understanding this outer body. This is where we are normally trapped. A
Then,
rasana, a my, oh my,
Okay,
what have you
so
done?
if I can just ask for a little pause here, Viji, Gurjeet Singh ji and Gurdeep Singh ji, just a couple of seconds. We've sort of heard some very interesting interpretations. Let me draw in the other participants. So Ekunkar Gorji, you've been hearing the discussion here in the past few minutes. What's your take on the fact that rasana is not to be confused with the tongue, and that we are essentially not talking about the body, but that all of these are pointers or markers for an inner sort of self?
I don't agree with that perspective, at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because, but I'll tell you again. I'll give you the view from my perspective. It is very easy for people to repeat in a ritualistic way, and ritualism doesn't work. No matter what you do, if you ritualistically wear a turban, if you ritualistically jump, it doesn't work. But jump clearly, from my study, means repeat. And there's a reason, which is that our neuronet, our brain, is the result of how we speak, not how we're silent, how we speak. And so the process of the first sort of baby level of japa, which is that I make the sound with my tongue, and then as I do that, the rasana is the change that happens in my brain when I chant properly, not ritualistically, but straight spine, from the navel, with love, singing. Kirtan is a very foundational practice. Guru never, ever, ever recited poetry, he sang it. So our whole tradition is based on this process of singing and reciting through singing that creates a juice in the brain. It changes the chemistry of the brain. As we start to do that, and our relationship between the sound and the mind gets developed through the mechanism of the tongue and the japa, then it goes to a deeper level. Then the japa is a meditation on, wow, what am I really talking about? What do I really need to embody here? What do I really need to become? And so, to think that these words are single dimensional isn't true, because a disciple has to go through a process. You start off as a baby and you grow to maturity, and we can't expect the most mature of you to be imposed on the baby step. But the japa is the tongue and the brain chemistry changing, and the juice getting created. And then in time, as you develop, you can sit in absolute silence in Dhyan, and feel the sound, and it fills your being, and you are aware of all of these things, and you understand the Guru's word at a deeper level. But you've got to let people go through that process. I mean, the Guru sat and sang with people. We have to sit and sing together, and then the journey unfolds in each of us, because the body and the mind are not disconnected. The body and the mind are interconnected, and Gurbani is a tool to work both body and mind and that connection together. So that's the perspective I have about it.
Thank you, thank you. We will come back to Gurjeet Singh ji, but I want to give Eileen and Harvinder a chance to chime in. Eileen?
Hanji, I think that the Ikonkor Khalsa's interesting interpretation there. I think that's really interesting to think of it as that some type of a journey, because I think I often feel that that draw toward the repetition being sort of an end state. I sort of feel like, well, that to me doesn't seem like the right end state. It seems that that deeper understanding is the end state, and I guess I don't always understand the connection between that. It doesn't seem intuitive to me to have that repetition lead you to Gurmat. Like that, I don't understand how those two go together. One seems like a contemplation of ideas and practice in the world, and the other one seems much like a much more isolated, or not always isolated. I guess in Sangat you'd have group, singing kirtan, but there's something different. I guess I can't quite articulate it, but there's something that is a metaphysical in a way, like a magical element there that I feel is I don't see the connection between that to go to the Gurmat, and that's what I struggle with most. So I think it's an interesting thing a process.
Yeah, indeed. This is an interesting conversation. So let me ask Harvinder before we circle back around. Harvinder, do you want to say something? You've been...
Hanji, I think I'm listening to both all the participants, and I think I'm still not able to make up the mind whether this body is basically, in the positive sense, it is telling that start with the chanting and then you will reach at the point and become one with the Vaheguru, or this is going, as Gurjeet Viji says, that no, this is not the right path. Only Nanak Nadri Paiye is the only positive line from this body, and everything else is showing the other person who are on the wrong track. So I think I'm still not able to make up my mind.
Okay. No, I think so. Let me address Veer Gurjeet Singh again. Anji Veerji, you've heard some different variations to what you have said, with Ekankar Kaurji not agreeing with you and essentially talking in terms of repetition and its impact on the sort of brain. And I think there is enough evidence now, even in science, to show that there is indeed, words shaping your brain and vice versa. To that, I would add, and of course, Eileen has, trying still sort of in the middle somewhere, trying to figure this out, like a lot of us. But I would also like to ask, throw in this. So, to Ekunkarji's point, the body and mind are not divorced. I think that we are all pretty clear about. There is a definite link. Gurbani also refers to the body as housing Hari Mandir. The third thing that I want to throw in there is that in all spiritual traditions across the world that I'm familiar with, there is a process of inversion that is involved in the private practice of an individual, because there is a private aspect and a social aspect, and that this process of inversion does actually involve moving inwards, and recitation happens to be the very first step. So I just want to throw all of this out there so that you can shed some light. Viji?
Let's first answer Ekonkar's question. If you want to become doctor, will you start saying word doctor, 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 or will you go and study the course? Even the best of these people who chant. Do you
want me to answer that question?
Yes, please answer that question.
The very first step of becoming a doctor is that I think to myself, I want to be a doctor. There's definitely a mental recitation of the concept of doctor that then drives me to the action of becoming a doctor. If I don't have that thought in mind, and if I'm not repeating that thought to myself, there will never be the impetus to action.
Okay, that's good. And then I'll say you a pankti, and then you try to translate that. The aim of Sikh is to meet his guru. Because you are not in the last two of our conversations which we do on Saturday. They say Guru, Guru, Gur Karman More. There are 2 times the word Guru coming, and then the third word says Gur. Go and do the course. Don't start saying Guru, Guru straight away. You will never do anything, because Naam has been described in Gurbani in 4 states. Naam Japna, that's the first stage. Naam Simarna is the second stage. Naam Tyauna is the third stage. And Naam Aradhana is the 4th stage. And all these Sikh books, whatever are written, I have read so far, they think all these 4 words are same. You start with a Jap, you go to Simran, then you go to Tyauna, and then you go to the last one, which is aradhana. It is not a thing that we just do it. Then what was the use of writing 1438 pages or 1430 pages if that was so simple? Yogis were stuck. If you ever remember the Pauri, I'll tell you one best thing about this thing. If you read Gurmukh Nadang, Gurmukh Vedang, see the importance of Gurbani. The yogi doesn't have a granth, but he says, I have an ad. The Pandit says, I have a granth, but I don't have an ad. You see the whole problem in the Indian society? How the truth was distorted. One group split it out. They say, we just have the Ved. Pandit only has the Ved, but doesn't have the Nad. Yogi says, I have the Nad, but I don't have the Ved. Guru Nanak combined them. They say, Gurmukh has both Nad and Ved. Gurmukh Nadang, Gurmukh Vedang, Gurmukh Raya Samai, because Gurmukh is directly in touch with Sachkhand. So this is how we are trying to get half the picture. And what is Naam? We'll have a discussion. I would like you to join on that. That we'll try to clear through Gurbani. What is Naam? Okay, I'll tell you two examples of Simran. Mat Garab mein apan Simran de. You don't even have a tongue in the Mat Garab. You don't even have a language in the Mat Garab. What sort of indication is Gurbani telling us? There's another indication. Bin jehbaje jape hiyaye. Koi jane aisa na. 1 in trillion knows about the name which is to be recited without the tongue. That is the Naam. Anything which you achieve in life, you have automatically given me an answer that you go and do the process for it. If you want to become doctor or a teacher, that's your first process. Then you go and take a course. The first step you do is a jap. You read the whole course. Then they ask you for an exam. That they test you.
So, Veerji, I want to stop you. I want to stop you. So you just mentioned reading the whole course. So what about those who can't read?
Who can't read? Everyone can read.
No, that is not true.
He can listen.
What if he doesn't have that option? What if he doesn't have? Not everyone has that option either.
Not you're saying in 21st century, what sort of options we don't have? How many people?
No. You're talking about people like us who have all the options. I'm just thinking about people who may not have that particular. What if he
I don't think so. By this time, everyone has at least an option either to read or write.
I don't agree with you there. I don't think not everybody is literate.
You tell me what percentage is those people who are without this?
But it may.
I have a thought there.
What's the percentage?
What if it is just one person? That to me is enough.
I have a thought.
Yes.
We are not talking about one cases.
Anji, let Eileen say something.
We are talking about masses. We are talking about general masses.
Well, it's something that's this point about access to the Gurbani is something, it's very relevant to me because I've only just spent a year, having learned how to read the Gurmukhi, and the whole reason was just to be able to read the Gurbani because I wanted to understand the actual meanings. And I thought to myself often is in going through this, is this really for me? Because if, how would I have ever accessed this if there wasn't the internet, or if there wasn't, SriGranth.org and Khoj Gurbani and all of these points at this day right now, at this moment, that are available to me, miraculously, these resources allow me to access. And I thought about that. I thought, well, that made it seems like it's a barrier. But then I realized also, even at the time that the gurus lived, there were people who did not access the Gurbani, right? So it gave me some relief to think that this is part of the hukum, that we accept whatever access is available to us, right? And so I think maybe some people have a limitation on their ability to access. It could be geographic limitation, it could be physical limitation, and that's part of the hukum. Just as people have different resources, food and health and all kinds of resources, and that's been my sort of way to understand why I have access and someone else doesn't, or why I'm able to to go and on a deeper level, and some people may not have the resources, and maybe they can only, they're not literate enough to spend that kind of, time in vichar, and maybe they just, they can only access a certain level.
Interesting, interesting indeed. Gurdeep Singh Veerji, let me give you an opportunity to chime in.
I once again will dwell on this. Some examples for rasna is rasna gidi bolat ram. बोलन तो इत्थे की मतलब होएगा, मतलब जब रसना नाल बोलना ही नहीं, रसना साडी वो ते इंटेलेक्ट है समथिंग, फिर इत्थे बोलन दा की मतलब होएगा?
हाँ जी
वीर जी,
हाँ जी
उस तो पहला ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਨਾ ਵੀਰ ਜੀ, ਰਸਨਾ ਜੀਵ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲਦੀ, ਰਸਨਾ ਹੀ ਬੋਲਦੀ ਹੈ। ਰਸਨਾ ਇੰਸਟਰਕਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੀਵ ਨੂੰ ਬੋਲਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਚੇਤਨ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਹੈ, ਜੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ। ਇਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਵੈਨ ਵੀ ਰੀਡ ਦਾ ਸ਼ਲੋਕ, ਨਾਨਕ ਤੇ ਮੁਖ ਉਜਲੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਛੁੱਟੀ ਨਾਲ, which ਮੁਖ is ਨਾਨਕ talking about? Is the outside skull which we have, or the inner mukh he is talking about? I think that's the very first example which we should keep in mind, ki nanak te mukh ujle, which mukh is ujla? O mukh di rasna ki hai? That same mukh has a rasna, that same mukh has a karan, the same mukh has a jihva. So we have to think from that angle. I know we have not been thinking from that angle. So that's why the whole philosophy.
जी, I have a counter question. बोलना जेड़ा है वो ते एक sound है, sound जेड़ा है
that is created by us,
right? मेरा मतलब है कि जे बोलन दा जेड़ा process है वो अगर चेतन नहीं हैगा, जड़ है, और तब वो तो एक sound है, तो फिर रसना भी इत्थे sound है ना?
जी नहीं, रसना तो बिना बोलिया नहीं जा सकता। ਜਦੋਂ body dead ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕੀ गायब हो जाता है? रसना गायब हो जाती है ਵਿੱਚੋਂ।
चेतन एग्जैक्टली यू हैव आंसर्ड कि जो बॉडी डेड हो जाती है, रसना तो बिना चेतन भी नहीं बोल सकता।
ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਜੇ ਚੇਤਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲ ਸਕਦਾ, ਪਰ ਬੋਲਣ ਸ਼ਕਤੀ ਤਾਂ ਰਸਨਾ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਜੀ, ਬੋਲਣ ਸ਼ਕਤੀ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ।
So I think what I'm understanding Veerji is saying, Gurdeep Singh Veerji, is that our ears and these are just tools. They don't act by themselves, but rasna, if we think of it as chetana, is actually working through these instruments. So
that's right.
So I think that is what he's trying to suggest, which is fine. But what my point here is that the tongue does come into play. So I get what you're saying, but nonetheless, the tongue comes into play. And to Ekankar Kaurji's point, the body is not divorced from Chetana. There is an interplay between them. And I also had said that all traditions that I'm aware of do in fact inculcate and encourage the practice of what we refer to as japana with the tongue. But that is not the end all of the practice. This is simply, it's like an athlete trying to sharpen his skills. So, as far as I can understand, the whole idea of using your tongue is to somehow sharpen your skills in order to get there. And the skill here being to magnify your consciousness through an inversion process. Haji Harvinder Singh ji, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰਹਿ ਗਏ ਹੋ?
I think I'm okay. I think
You're okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm listening.
All right. Let me do a quick round again. Ekukar Kaurji,
I have
any further thoughts?
Ravinder Singh ji?
Haji.
I think we have to, come back to the question that Eileen asked regarding the kita. If we are interpreting the kita as kida or worm, are we assuming that? Because I always assume that is referring to the fake people, that they look at the people who are at this stage of high level, who are one with Guru, they look at them and try to follow them, but not by the heart. but by just with their activities. So I always assume there's the kita refers to the people like the fake sadhus we say, and not to the warm or can we go on that?
Okay. So I think what Harvinder is asking is whether Kita refers to quote unquote counterfeit fake people, or is this an analogy that Guru Nanak is drawing? It is akin to saying that an ant desires to fly the skies, something that is not possible for it to do generally because it crawls on the ground. So let me jump to Egunkar Kaurji for a little insight into this particular question.
Okay. Although before I go to that question, I just wanted to answer the first question you asked just really quick. In the discussion we've had so far, just kind of one line of Gurbani. I remember it in English, so I don't remember the Gurmukhi quote, but Guruji says that it's one of my favorite quotes, and he talks about singing kirtan, and he says, to sing kirtan without love in your heart is like sitting down to an amazing feast and not eating anything. And so when we talk about this issue between the technique of jap or kirtan or singing versus the consciousness, I think that quote really gives us a context, which is the consciousness has to be there for the technique to work, but the technique is definitely part of it. So that's just kind of to address that other question. And in terms of kita, it's not a subject I've studied deeply, but looking at my notes, I just see it written, down both ways. Is that it can refer to the person who's not recognizing the light within themselves. That it's, the ones who are false practitioners, the ones who are dreaming, daydreaming. But even still, they have a longing. I think there's a place where God is very compassionate, and that we need to see his words as compassionate, and that he's always speaking compassionately. So, whether the worm or the ant is actually a being, it's referring to a low being, however you want to define a low being. But even the lowest being, no matter how you define it, is going to long to return home. And how do they get there, Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful, but...
Hanji, Gurdeep Singh ji, do you have any, can you address Eileen's question about Kita? Oh, he's not here?
Hanji, I will pass this question.
Hanji, Gurjeet Singh Veer ji?
Hanji Bhai Sahib, its pronunciation is not kita, its pronunciation is kita. It's a plural word. And if you read Bhagat Ravdas, he says, Upajyo Gyan Hua Pragas Kar Kirpa Line Keet Dar. Keet is the one who doesn't have any knowledge, who is just attached to the body just for food. Even when you read Bhagat Farid ji, he says, Farida it sirane poe savan keeda ladeo mas. Ladeo da matlab hunda lad lagana, attached. Keeda is one of that being who is only attached to his body just for food. That's it. That's why he says कि जोगी दी problem की है कि सब तो पहला तो food दी problem है जोगी को. And Jogi is propagating this naam to people. He is himself a Kida. He has not even taken the first step of spirituality. And Kita iris riso bhaktan di karda si. Jeda Kida hai, jine aje tak who not even come out of, because Guru Nanak spent 20 years outside. He never begged or never do work for his. He knew permission will feed him. Yogi doesn't even have this first belief. He go and beg from people. He think Parmeshwar is not there. So that's why I think he has been very nicely emphasized that such people who says will repeat name, he has given you about that even if you do it 2 billion times, you are still be a Kida because you haven't done the jap. The word here is lakh lakh geda akhiya, not jap. Jap word has been very nicely used. If I give you one line from Guru Nanak's own Bani, which is his Thitti, which Guru Nanak has to write because Kabir ji has written a Thitti. I'll just read you his line. What Guru Nanak says about, he says, Kya jap japo bin jagdisa. You see the contradiction in these lines. There he says, Lakh lakh geda akhiyan ek naam Jagdish. That has been rejected. But in this pankti he says, Kya jap. The other word is not jap. The other word is japo. Once you have understood, jo tusi padh liya hai, that is your jap. Whatever you are trying to make me understand, that is your jap. So the Japji Sahib actually is Guru Nanak's jap. Whatever Guru Nanak has understood, that's what his, but he has done a jap himself. He has understood the whole pankti, whole of Gurmat, and then from that jap, he is giving us a jap. So, kya jap japo bin Jagdish? There is no one else to know about Jagdish. Because if you see the word jap comes with a lot of things. If Ravidas Ji's we were reading, he was saying jap mukand seva tahu ki. Can we start saying mukand mukand? Harka se prabh ka simran sabte ucha. Can we start saying prabh prabh? Means what to say? And ultimately Dasam Pasha has given us this. He says Namastang Nirnamme. He has no name. Forget about such names. He has virtues. I normally tell jis tarah thoda naam Ravinder Singh hai ji. That is your name, but your naam is different. Naam is your virtues. If Ravinder Singh would have been Kulvinder Singh, you would have been the same person. That's what we don't understand. We are after words. Words are created by us. But what are the virtues behind the words? That is your jap. That will give us the understanding that we have a Ram in us, we have a Krishna in us. They are our words. If Ram would have been Krishna, Krishna would have been Ram, we would have understood that way too. You drive on the other side of the road in America, I drive on this side, but we are both comfortable because we have devised that jap in us. So jap will never ever mean to repeat because Chetan da jap hona. The word has to be associated with Chetana, not with the jeeb. So when you jap, your basic, you come into your heart to understand, and that's what.
Hanji, ठीक है जी. Thank
so
you,
many
Avij ji.
Jap,
Hanji.
you have to come into the heart. The mind has to travel from Trikuti to
Hanji,
heart to do the jap.
Hanji, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I think this discussion could go on, but we are kind of running out of time. I'm going to give each panel member a chance to give their concluding thoughts and to suggest whether or not they think we ought to continue with this Pauri next week. So, Ekokarji, I will start with you.
You know, my concluding thought is that I so deeply disagree with some of the views that I've heard tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're so dangerous, honestly, to start convincing people that jap doesn't mean repeat, that there wasn't a science that the Guru gave us to awaken ourselves. He went to illiterate people, he gave them songs, they sang those songs, they repeated the songs, and they healed themselves. And there's an aspect of Bani that has the Guru's light in it, and it's enough. But I'm grateful to be here and listen and develop myself to understand how many different perspectives there are about Gurbani and expose myself to things I've never heard before. So I appreciate being included in the conversation.
And we appreciate your presence here because we do, every time, at least speaking for myself, we always get a different nuance on things. And I think that's the whole point of being in a forum like this. We are all coming at this from our own perspectives. And like you know, we hear things that we haven't heard. And I think that in itself is not such a bad thing.
Yeah,
it forces us to sort of think a little deeper. So thank you. Do you think we should continue on with this discussion, or do you think that it might become circular?
I mean, I think it could become circular, but I think that this becomes then, when you're looking at the entire Sri Guru Granth Sahib, these key differences and perspective then coat the entire conversation as you keep going, and as long as people are aware of that, then that's always going to be the dance going on.
Indeed, and I suppose there is a dance going on anyway. So, all right, thank you, Eileen.
Hanji, I would like to have maybe at least some portion, a little bit from. I just really appreciate the different perspectives. It's actually helping to get a little bit closer to kind of a unified idea, and I always kind of prefer those places where I can find a little bit of a unified idea. So that would be my preference. And especially just on Gurdeep Singh Ji's had just this comment about content behind the words, and I thought that was really really insightful. In fact, you know, kind of coming back to the rest of this Pauri, we haven't really touched on some of the other aspects in there. And,
sure. So will you be joining us next week? Do you know?
Yes, I think I can be here.
Okay, and then what I would suggest is that if you could come prepared with some questions up front, so that we can just sort of take off from there.
Sure, absolutely. I can put on the blog too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Hanji, Gurdeep Singh Ji?
Hanji, he has to go.
He has to go. Okay, and Gurjeet Singh Ji, thank you so much for offering us a viewpoint that, frankly, I mean, I think is cause for us to reflect further. Not that I like Concur Khoj, I obviously have some differences and reservations, but nonetheless, I think this is a good thing that we are engaged in a conversation. ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਹੈ about continuing next week?
Yeah, if like Eileen can bring some question, because it can only be understood if we have more questions.
Hanji.
But there are panktis like Brahm Gyani ko khojhe Maheshwar. Why Maheshwar is looking for Brahm Gyani? If he has the Gyan, why he should be looking for Brahm Gyani? This is Brahm Gyan. It will always tend to differ from other.
Sure. ठीक है जी, thank you so much. And Harvinder Singh Ji?
Hanji, I think we will start with this Pauri with any questions, and then we continue on the next Pauri, 33.
And with that, I want to thank each one of you for a wonderful session. Much enlightenment to be gained here, at least for me. And I hope to see you all next week. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ki